What was your wow? It's such a small world experience. Back in 2011, I used to date a Chinese girl who was studying in the Netherlands. I'm Dutch, and we often hung out with her Chinese friends from school. Fast forward to 2017, I moved to China for work and noticed a familiar looking face downstairs in my office building. Turns out one of her friends who is originally from Beijing, studied in the Netherlands, where I met her a few times, now works in the same office building in Shanghai, 9,000 kilometers away from the place we both used to live. When I was 18, I traveled from Boston to Colorado for a ski vacation with my family. During lunch in a mid-mountain lodge, I saw a girl that I just felt drawn to, but I didn't have the confidence to approach. After lunch, I went to put my snowboard on, and she walked right up to me because her skis were right next to my board. I struck up conversation with her, and we ended up sharing a ski lift. We talked the whole way up. She was visiting her brother, a dentist in Denver, for the week. We made small talk and then went our separate ways. We never exchanged names. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. About 2 weeks later, my mother mentioned she had spoken to an old friend who had been our neighbor until I was about 4. Anyway, she mentioned her daughter, who I had spent countless days with starting as a toddler, but who now lives in New Jersey, had just been in Colorado, visiting her brother, a dentist, in Denver. Then my mother finds an old photo album and finds a picture of us together around age 4. And it was definitely her. I ended up getting her number and we connected, but it never went anywhere because long distance. We were on a family vacation at a theme park 4 hours away. My brother had a kid in school that he didn't like. I don't know how it came up, but we were talking about him, and my brother said, if I see person's name here, I'll kill myself. I shit you not 30 minutes later we see this very same kid get off a roller coaster and yell, "Hey, my brother's name." I just looked at my brother and started cracking up at the look on his face. It was the most random case of small world that's happened to me. I ran into my aunt and uncle at a random truck stop in the middle of Pennsylvania. The odds of that happening were crazy low. I'm from Indiana and they live in Arizona. I moved from AL to CA and started working at a Best Buy. Found out the guy working at the tech bench, the other side of customer service, where I worked, was also from AL, and we discovered we were from the same town, went to the same college, and had the same major. Later that day it struck me that he sat right beside me in one of my classes. 5 years later I'm living back in AL and the neighbor that just moved in next door comes to introduce himself. Same damn guy. I was friends with this guy I met at a summer camp once. Since people came from all over the country and sometimes from around the world to this camp, chances are we would never see each other again. 6 months later, he and I run into each other at the orientation for the IB high school we both coincidentally applied to. I was in the Air Force and stationed in California. I worked with a young lady and I ended becoming acquaintances with her and her husband. Ultimately, we both end up getting stationed on other sides of the world and completely fall out of contact. 3 years later I'm taking my kids to my neighborhood pool in NC and some person says, "Hey, inconvenient bonus." It was her and her family and they had just moved into the neighborhood. I was in disbelief, it was so crazy. What a small fucking world. I made this friend recently, we have the same birthday and a lot of other small oddly specific similarities, so we joke about being twins. I recently found out her mom is friends with my high school econ teacher who is also my grandfather's golf buddy. My grandmother had 2 twins. She was told one died. In reality, while she was loopy from the medication or whatever, events aren't very clear, her family had her sign the rights of one of the twins away because they had sold him without her knowledge. Fast forward many years, they were the oldest of my grandmother's kids, and my mom is taking me to school, and I see my uncle in a weird car go speeding past. Me, being 4 or 5, tried to get his attention, and my mom explained that wasn't my uncle but his twin. The weird thing is though, they were born in CA, and we had moved to southern Oklahoma/northern Texas by that point. I was on a yearly Vegas trip with a group of friends from high school. My girlfriend, now wife, typically didn't go because we like to maximize the time by staying up until 3 and waking up around 7 for a couple days, and she values sleep. I was very drunk in a casino leaning over a balcony and talking shit about the people below when someone taps me on the shoulder. I turn around and it takes drunk me a full 20 seconds to recognize my girlfriend's mom and sister. I hadn't seen them in 3 years because they normally live in Africa. Neither me nor my girlfriend realized they were even in the country. We FaceTimed my GF together, then went our separate ways for the night. Got harassed by a coworker's boyfriend over a misunderstanding, and he was a real dick about it, yelling and cussing in front of customers and threatening to come back after close and the whole deal. He did not. Over a decade later, I'm a stand-in date for a wedding with a friend for people I've never met about 3 cities over. Reception seating puts me side by side with the angry boyfriend from before. Guy remembers and genuinely apologizes. Says he's nothing like that anymore and that he was an angry kid. He also doesn't drink, despite there being fancy bottles of every variety at each table, because that fed his anger before. Complete turnaround and a total surprise coincidence. I've been on 3 cruises in my life. Once during my sophomore year of high school, once during my junior year of high school, and once during my freshman year of college. On each of the 3 cruises, I bumped into one of my high school classmates. The weirdest was my freshman year of college. I was waiting for an elevator, and once one arrived, I went in and pressed the button for my floor. Behind me I hear, Pac-Man 1988. I turned around, and lo and behold, there was a guy I'd had 2 classes with my senior year. When I found out my best friend for like 2 years was my cousin. My parents when I was young owned an obnoxious green panel van that my father converted to a mini RV/camper. We often drove 2,500 kilometers to visit my dad's family for the summer. We lived in Canada and the shortest route was through the northern US, plus less chances of running out of gas because there were just far more people and cities along the way. On the way home from visiting for the summer, we stopped at a mall to shop a bit and to grab a bite to eat. When we came out, there was a note taped to the windshield that said, "Hey, last name, family. Hope you're having fun shopping in the US." We never figured out who left the note. It's been about 40 years now. Ha. Bumped into 2 internet message board friends 3 days walk into the Costa Rican rainforest. They recognized me from like one prom photo. I had just started a new job and was assigned a mentor. Lockdown in place, so contact via text messages only. She went on vacation, so did I, about 1,000 kilometers away from home. My first hour at the campsite I was watching my kids. Someone standing next to me heard me speaking Dutch, so we got to talking. After about 5 minutes, figured out she was my mentor. I went to a snow cabin party in one country where I didn't know anyone. Months later I was recognized on a hiking trail in another country by 2 guys from that same party. My husband was talking on his ham radio to someone in Istanbul, and we live on the Oregon coast in Tillamook County. My husband told him where we were, and the guy said that he literally just came back from vacation to the United States and Oregon in particular. He mentioned how much he enjoyed the Tillamook Creamery, which we drive by every day. I went to Australia with my kid at 7, and we stopped the caravan at a random playground. He found a kid that he played with for 30 minutes, then came running back. When I asked how cool that you can play together without speaking the same language, he just answered no, that was Lars. We live in Scandinavia. That was a friend from his school. I went on vacation with the family I nanny for. We were in a small town on the Croatian. The family forgot to pack nighttime diapers, so I went out to get some. Who do I bump into? Another family I regularly babysit for. Also buying diapers. One of my regular customers, we'll call Cassie, when I worked at Sheetz, was honestly one of my favorite customers. Well, I found out recently that my mom works with her mom. When my mom told me, I didn't believe her at first. I went to pick my mom up from work one day and met Cass's mom. Literally the first words out of my mouth were, "Wow, it really is a small world." My girlfriend from HS works at the same company I do. Her office is a few doors down from mine. Considering that I live and work 120 miles from where I grew up, this is a bit too much of a coincidence for me. When I was 12, my family and I vacationed in Florida over the holidays. We checked into a hotel one night and us kids all wanted to hit the pool. There was one other family in the pool at the time. It turned out that those parents graduated from the same high school at the same time as my parents. They even knew each other from way back when. We all lived in Michigan, over 1,000 miles away. Crazy to me that all of us took a vacation to the same place, checked into the same hotel, and were the only people to hit the pool at the exact same time that night. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the mountains of Peru. A Fulbright scholar moved in near me, and we found out we had lived on the same block in San Diego, but I moved out a month before he moved in. Later on, some of his Fulbright friends came to visit, and one of them had lived on the same block in Philadelphia as I had, and at the same time. This guy who works for the same company as me, I have seen him twice in a foreign country. First time we were staying at the same hostel in Peru. Then a couple years later I was walking down a street in Thailand and saw him eating dinner. The kicker? I had never seen him at work, minus one time we were in the same room early on. I only knew who he was because of pictures, and I thought he was cute. When my little brother was in preschool, a girl in the grade above him passed away of a disease that could be prevented with a vaccine. I'm totally blanking on the name. My mom was super diligent about vaccinating us after that because it freaked her out. We moved cities across the country and switched schools. Brother had a partner for a project and they are talking about topics they are passionate about, so the boy mentions vaccines because his sister died of a preventable disease. As he is telling the story, things are lining up and we realize his sister was the girl who passed away. They had also moved. It was crazy. But also nice for the dad to know his daughter had an impact on us. I had a GF a while ago. She had a best friend who was living in London. The best friend had made a new friend and they decided to come to our place outside of London for the weekend. When they were about to introduce me to her new friend said Mark, not real name. Gasps all around. Turns out my GF's best friend's new friend was a friend of mine from college. I have a retired Japanese fire truck. I live in the USA, and I follow a bunch of other retired Japanese fire trucks on Instagram. I ran into a fire truck that I already followed on Instagram while visiting my parents who live on the opposite coast from me. This truck also happened to be the same make and model as mine, just a few years younger. Ran into some good friends of mine on a random Wednesday at a Dave & Buster's 200 miles from home. I was driving a Toyota pickup on the Makgadikgadi Salt Basin in Botswana, completely alone, when I came across another car that had broken down. Got out to help, just go learn. The couple in the other car were Danish like me. Traveled from the UK to Germany on holiday. First morning in the hotel, when I came down for breakfast there was a guy wearing the same jumper as me. I went to a seasonal police academy for a resort town. The town was 8 hours of driving away from my hometown. The first day was intense, but I noticed someone I swore was familiar. In the coming week I finally realized the connection. He was my freshman roommate's younger brother. He was more than 9 hours from his hometown. Both of us entering this academy class of about 95 people. My dad was at his uncle's funeral. At the end of the ceremony they handed out a prayer card to everyone with a nice poem and picture of his uncle to keep. He lost his and was upset. 2 days later he was in a completely different part of the country walking through town when a prayer card from my uncle's funeral blew across the sidewalk in front of him. He managed to pick it up. So I visited the island of Thasos, Greece. One time on a beach my sister took someone's plastic buckets shovels. I asked her to return it, but then I realized the stuff belonged to our grandmother's neighbors. We live in northern Bosnia, they live a bit more east, pretty far away from Greece. Some university friends and I were backpacking around Mexico. We were on a deserted beach near Tulum when we spotted some people off in the distance. When our paths crossed, we got chatting, and it turned out that they were good friends with several people in our class. Our university was in the north of Scotland. I was in the Navy for 6 years out of Norfolk and had several close friends, but pre-internet days it was easy to lose contact. Fast forward a dozen years, and I'm in a Fry's in San Jose, California, and he walks up behind me and says I'm just a mellow dude, which was his way of saying hi. I've had a few of these types of experiences. Ran into a girl from elementary school that I had a crush on. It was almost 20 years later, in another part of the country. I was paired up at a golf course randomly with a friend from my Navy days, probably 30 years since we'd seen each other. I moved from a very small town, about 2,000 people, to a very big city across the country, millions of people. I became very good friends with this local girl that was born and raised in the big city. She starts dating this guy who she later marries, and I start talking to him and find out that he is from the same small town I used to live in, and on top of that, his mom was my landlord. She had converted her home into a duplex and rented out half of her house to me years ago. Truly felt like a small world. While on holiday in Athens several years ago, I saw a guy doing gymnastics in the old Olympics stadium. We matched on Tinder several months later in Germany. He is originally from China. I'm originally from Slovakia. No, we are not dating, but met up, just for the fun of it. I grew up in a town of about 45,000 in Missouri. My family and I were in Lyon, France, and ran into a guy wearing our high school's t-shirt. I went to school in Wisconsin. Traveled to Europe one summer. On a bus in Prague, overheard some people talking in English, so I listened in. All of a sudden one girl said, "No way, I go to the University of Wisconsin," to 3 separate groups of college kids from the same university randomly running into each other in the middle of the night on a bus in Prague. My sister and I were backpacking through Europe before smartphones were a thing, back '99. We were lost in Amsterdam and I asked a dude I saw on the street if I could borrow his map real quick. While I'm looking at it, the guy goes, "Hey, your name is Kungjin." I'm stunned. I look up from the map and take a good look at the guy for the first time. It was a friend of mine from middle school back in Cali that I had lost touch with. Spent the next few days partying in Amsterdam together. Haven't seen him since.